Now that we've seen how to write files and how to move the file pointer around, we're ready to learn how to read back information from files. So to start us out, I want to open up filewrite.php just so we have that as a reference for the steps that we used to write a file, because it's going to be very similar. And then I'm going to also open a new PHP document, and I'll save that in my sandbox, and I'll just call it fileread.php. So just like before, we have our PHP tags, and let's go ahead and specify the file we want. We'll have it be the same thing, file test again. Opening the file is going to be pretty much the same thing, except that instead of overwriting, now we want to read, and that's that R option. So we'll open it up. I'll go ahead and close my curly braces so I don't forget. And then inside here, we need to actually do the reading. And just like we used fwrite over here, we're going to have something similar. We're going to have fread that will read back in. So we'll pass in the file handle that we created. And the other option that we need to pass in as argument for fread is how many bytes do we want it to read? I'm just going to say 3 for now. And then I'll just make a note here that each character is 1 byte. Now that's true in typical English language. We have 1 byte characters. In something like Chinese, it's multi-byte characters. So it is not necessarily true. But for the English language with the typical Roman alphabet, each character is going to be 1 byte long. And then the other thing, of course, we need to do is we don't want to just read it. We want to do something with that read. Now, we could just echo it out. That's perfectly valid. But I'm going to go ahead and just capture it in a variable, content. And then we want to, of course, make sure that we do our fclose that we normally do to close up the file once we're done with it. So now we've read 3 bytes in, or 3 characters, and we've assigned them to content. So in order to take a look at that, we could just simply put in echo content, and we'll be able to see those results back. Let's try that out. So we'll go into Firefox, localhost B2B sandbox, and we'll open up file read.php. And sure enough, it comes back with XYZ. And I'll just move this out of the way so we can bring up file test.txt. Yours might have something different. For me, it brought back these 3 characters, those 3 bytes. If we were to bring back more, let's say we brought back 6 characters, close that up. Firefox, reload the page. You'll notice that it all comes through as 1 line. It didn't break to a new line. That new line character is actually in there as part of the output. What we need to do in that case is to actually use the NL2BR tag. And that is basically saying that we're going to take H new line and turn it into a BR tag so that HTML will show it properly. And now we can see the break as we would expect. So instead of just getting this, we end up getting the 2-line version. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what about if we don't know how many bytes a file is? We want to still be able to, let's say, read in an entire file regardless of how long it is. Well, with that, we can use file size. So fread handle, and then we'll ask the file, tell me what your file size is. How many bytes are you? And so file size comes in useful by telling us the total number of bytes. We will now read the file until we get to that total number of bytes. Then we'll know we have everything. And then we can do the same echo back. And let's go ahead and put in the NL2BR. We'll try that out. And now we get in the entire file. Now, back over here on the file writing, we had file put contents. And that was a shortcut for us that would do the open, the writing, and the close. Well, we have the same kind of thing that we can do for reading, and that is file get contents. So we say, get the contents of this file, get everything there is. It takes care of file size and all that for us, reads to the end of the file, and then we have the ability to just echo that back. If we switch back over to Firefox and we reload the page, you'll see that it did. I didn't put the NL2BR there, but we know what that does. Now, the last thing that I want to make sure that I show you is incremental reading. Now, we've already seen how we can do incremental reading by reading a few bytes, but another thing that's really useful is to be able to read 1 line at a time. So, for example, if we had tab delimited data, so we're looking at an export that's been done of attendees or products, something like that, we could take that value and we could look for the first name, the last name, and everything as we parse through each line. And each one has a line return at the end, so it comes back. So we obviously want to just get a line, essentially. And in order to do that, what we use is fgets. Content equals fgets handle. And that will then get 1 line of the file, and that's the maximum amount that it will retrieve. Now, obviously, in a case like this, we're going to want to not just get 1 line back, perhaps, but still go through and get the entire file. And the way we can also do that is by using while statement, while not f for file, EOF for end of file. So while we're not at the end of the file, and we need to pass it the handle again so that it knows which file we're talking about, then go through and perform this loop. There we go. And of course, content then will need to be built up over time. We don't want to just keep replacing it. And we know how we could do that with something like append. So content starts out being equal to an empty string, and each time we'll add each line to it. Now, obviously, for doing something like this, we'd probably want to do some processing to it. We'd probably want to get this value, then parse it, then work with it, then store it to content. But what I wanted to just make sure that you saw was how this FEOF works, so that we can say loop through until you get to the end of the file. It essentially does the same thing as this file size does, but instead of providing a number of bytes, it says just keep getting a line, keep getting a line, keep getting a line. If you hit the end of the file, then stop whatever you're doing. And that's all we need to be able to read in files. We'll go back over and just try it one more time here. We didn't actually output anything here at the end. Let's just do that one last time so that we can see that that worked too. There we go. And there we are. So now we know how to both successfully write files and how to read from them. In the next movie, we'll take a look at how we can examine some of the file details.